to another Wednesday night for our virtual experience. This is the first Wednesday of the month. You know, we have set aside this time to have our voter information sessions. Thank God for Sister Maria Jones and her sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated, for partnering with us as we hope to bring you good information as we are fastly approaching our voting season. People of God, it is your civic responsibility to cast your ballot. Here is the reality. Politicians know your priority based upon how you vote. And it is important for us to get out and vote. And so tonight again, we will have another session for you. Sister Jones is going to come and guide us to the next aspects of what we're going to be doing here tonight. Mount Calvary, stay logged on. Glean from this information. Learning can never be boring. Learning can never be boring, and you've got to make sure that you're getting all of the information that's out there so that you are an informed voter. And so we thank God for her, thank God for her sorority, thank God for Mount Calvary and us partnering together to give you this information as it relates to voting. We've got to get out and vote. We have to get out and vote. And so we're excited about our speaker tonight, who's going to share with you concerning voter turnout. God bless you. Sister Jones is going to guide us the rest of the way. I love you. Stay logged on.
And thank you for joining us. As Pastor has asked, please like and share. But I'm going to ask you to get pen and paper. Some of the information that you'll hear tonight, as well as some that you will hear next month, will be things that you may want to reference later. Tonight, as well as the session in October, we're going to share information you might want to reference, and therefore, if you've got it written down, it's easier for you to find. This evening, we will share more about voting by mail and the secure lock boxes. However, our guest speaker tonight and next month will share information to actually help you choose who you will support during the 2020 election. No, we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but we will give you information that you will need to make an informed decision. This evening, James Manrique of the Champaign County Voter Alliance will share with you voting patterns from Champaign-Urbana, from the Champaign County. This information falls right in line with something that I really believe in. You know, it's really great that we register more and more people, and we always talk about registering all the people that we can. But what about the hundreds of registered voters who don't vote? That's kind of some of the information that James is going to share with you this evening. So if we can energize those people who are already registered and get them to vote, that would be a phenomenal thing. And so one of the things that we're going to ask you to do, and you may have heard it on some of the media things that are out there, is plan your vote. Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority is asking its members to talk to 8 to 10 people to talk about how you plan to vote. Well, Miriam, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is this. I've already got my plan to vote. I've already requested my ballot online. If you've not done that online, you most likely have already received an application in the mail where you can request your ballot. Once you request your ballot, then you have to decide who you're going to vote for. As I mentioned, James will share that information with you next month. There's a Champaign reference guide. I think that's the official name. I'm not really sure what the official name is. But there's a guide that has all the candidates, Republicans, Democrats, everyone who will be on the ballot. And so you want to have that information. So once I complete my ballot, what am I going to do? I can use the Dropbox, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, or I'm going to hand deliver mine to Brookings Administrative Center. If we all have our own decisions what to do, some people may want to go to early voting. You have options, but we want to make sure that you know what those options are, so that when it's time for you to cast your vote, it's not a matter of you don't know who to vote for, you don't know what the issues are, you don't know where to go. You will know all of those if you continue to watch our series and share that information with people. One of the things that I wanted to touch a little on before I pass it on to Ann and pass it on to James is to kind of reference what we talked about a little bit last month, and that was the referendum, the Illinois tax referendum. That's a heavy lift, and so we want to make sure that you understand that. And so the amount of taxes we pay is based upon our Constitution, the Illinois Constitution. The only way that can be changed is through an amendment to the Constitution. And so that is what this referendum is all about. And so how will it pass or fail? They look at it two ways. It's either the majority of people who vote for the referendum or 3/5 of the people who decide to vote on the referendum. So why do I say decide? We all know that people don't vote the entire ballot. That's something we really want to stress, that you vote the entire ballot. When you get your ballot at the very top, it's going to have that referendum. You need to either vote yes or no. Well, I don't have enough information, Muriel. Go back to that August the 5th, I'm sorry, I'm messing up my words. Go back to that August 5th video that we did, or recording that we did. It tells you the pros and the cons. If you want more information about the pros, the League of Women Voters has a nice spread of information on the voting referendum. They call it the fair tax. But you want both sides. We want you to know exactly what you're voting for. So on that last slide, on the video that we did last month, it tells you exactly where to go to get additional information. Don't wait till November the 3rd. You need that information right now so that you know exactly what you're going to be, whether you're going to vote yay or nay on that piece of legislation. So the last thing that I want to share before I turn it on to Ann, who is my partner in crime here, is to talk about the voting by mail and the drop boxes. And so I'm just going to read to you. It says, you can request your mail ballot now on the Champaign County website. And this is where that piece of paper or pen comes in handy. You can go to www.champaigncountyclerk.com. Champaign County Clerk is all one word. So that's www.champaigncountyclerk.com. The ballots are mailed to those requesting them starting September the 24th. I know you've heard stuff on TV that says, oh, ballots will be sent to anybody whether they requested them or not. Not in Illinois. It may happen in other states, but in Illinois, you have to request a ballot or you will not receive one. Mail ballots can be returned through the Postal Service. No postage is needed. Mail ballots can also be returned by using the secure drop boxes at these locations. Last month, we told you there were going to be 5 locations. Well, there's really 7. And so, where I told you my plan, I'm going to Brooklyn Administrative Center. That's one place that you can drop off your ballots. You can also go to the Urbana Free Library. You can go to the U of I Quad, Champaign Public Library, Douglas Branch Library, Sholem Aquatic Center, and Champaign-Urbana Public Health District Office. I will repeat those one more time. Brookings Administrative Center, Urbana Free Library, UI Quad, Champaign Public Library, Douglas Branch Library, Sholem Aquatic Center, and Champaign-Urbana Public Health District Office. Mobile drop boxes will also be available at the early voting locations in Rantoul, Tolono, St. Joseph, and Muhammad, each Saturday in October from 1 to 3 p.m. Early voting location, days and hours are listed on the Champaign County's website and also on the League of Women Voters website under voting election. I hope that information was helpful for you, but you'll probably hear it again because at Mount Calvary, we believe in repetition because repetition is how you get information to stick. Thank you for your time. Now there's Ann.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Muriel. Hi, I'm Ann Frisland with the League of Women Voters. It's a pleasure to be with you again this evening talking about voting and elections. As Muriel said, we're very lucky and blessed in Illinois to have many options to vote, and especially in this county. But regardless of how we choose to vote, the question always comes up, especially this year in this time of COVID-19, how can I vote safely? That's what I want to share with you a little bit about this evening. The county clerk Clerk's office has been working with CU Public Health, specifically with its administrator, Julie Pride, to review the county's voting options for public health and safety while we all vote. In addition, based on that research, the County Clerk's Office formed the Safe Vote Coalition, focused on election safety from a public health perspective. The League, the NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta, and other community organizations are part of this coalition. The purpose of the coalition is to help share information, accurate factual information, about how best to vote safely this November. I'm sure you'll start seeing media messages around this idea of safe voting come September. So what are the ways to vote safely? As Muriel indicated, the safest option, especially this fall, is voting by mail. Whether you're voting at home and then taking your ballot to the Postal Service, or using one of the secure drop boxes she mentioned, that is your safest way to vote from a public health perspective. In-person voting, of course, will be available this fall. And if you choose to vote in person, voting early is the safest way to go. I don't know if you voted early. I've done it many times, and I often find that there's no one in line but me. And it's a lot easier to keep social distance when you're the only one at the polling place. There will clearly be fewer voters in line. It's easier to keep that physical distance. And in addition, this year, there will be more locations for early voting and expanded hours. In addition, every site will have disinfectants, hand sanitizers, masks for workers and for those voters who may have forgotten theirs, and everything will be done to make sure that voting in person is as safe as can be this year. Election day voting is certainly an option too on November 3rd. Election day, though, has the most challenges. Every county in Illinois expects record turnout. So it's likely the lines at polling stations will be longer, meaning that you and I would have to wait in line and with a larger group of people for a long time. So if you're going to vote on election day, please also make sure to wear your mask and remember social distancing. So those are the suggestions from the Safe Vote Coalition about how to vote safely this November. Safe voting, though, also is about the security of my ballot. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit about the security that the county clerk will take for all of those who vote by mail. The first thing, as Muriel pointed out, is that in Illinois, you have to request a mail ballot. Once you request that ballot, your voter registration information is checked to make sure that you still are a registered voter in Champaign County before your ballot is mailed to you. Those secure drop boxes that Muriel mentioned, you may have seen on the news about voting that's done in states like Oregon or Washington or Colorado, where mail voting is the universal approach. They've been using secure drop boxes for many years, and our county clerk used their experience as a model for the ones we will have here in the county. They are heavy gauge steel, they're in highly visible areas, and in almost all those areas, if not all, security cameras are present. Nobody's going to run away with those secure drop boxes. Another important security feature is that each day, trained teams of Democratic and Republican election judges will go to each of the drop boxes and to the post office to pick up all the ballots that are in those locations that day. The ballots are put into secure containers and driven directly back to the county clerk's office for processing. And there's internal security too once those ballots get to the county clerk's office. They're always in the possession of trained volunteers, volunteer election judges from both parties. The way the ballots are processed during mail voting is very similar to what you and I have experienced at the polling place. The first thing that happens is the voter's information on the return envelope is compared with the voter's data in the county voter files to make sure that identity is confirmed. Then, the voter's signature is compared, signature on the return envelope is compared with the signature in the voter file. A panel of 3 election judges representing both parties reviews that signature to make sure that the signatures match. And finally, again, people from both parties are involved in opening the envelope, initialing it, and inserting the envelope into the tabulator, the voting machine, just the same way you do when you vote in person. So the combination of external and internal security, it's really important to be aware of when you're considering voting by mail. Because as we know from the public health people, voting by mail is really our safest option this year. Thank you very much, and I think it's James's turn next. Is that
Hi,
right?
my name is James. First, I'd like to thank Muriel and Mount Calvary Church for having me today. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and the Champaign County Voters Alliance. I've been working on voter turnout in the community for the last few years. Today, we'll go over some interesting voter turnout stats. First up, we'll take an overview look at Champaign County. As you can see in the slide, there's some interesting stats about the county. According to U.S. Census data, Champaign County's voting age population is right around 170,000. And then as of March 2020, there was a little over 119,000 registered voters. This means that there was a voter registration rate of roughly 69.9%. For the presidential elections in Champaign County, the average voter turnout rate of these registered voters was only 69.1%. These numbers line up with national trends, which shows that there's definitely room to grow in both the registered voters and the ballots cast for the registered voters. So that's Champaign County overall. But on the next slide, we'll take a look at some of the stats for neighborhoods in Champaign County. So Champaign County is divided into 118 voting precincts. Different precincts will have higher and lower voter turnout rates. Champaign County average, as we mentioned, is 69.1% for presidential elections. However, CC9 only has a voter turnout percentage of 53.8%. And CC21 is a different precinct that has a voter turnout percent of 84%. So different neighborhoods have consistently lower or higher turnout rates, just depending on the demographics that are in that neighborhood. So this goes to show that there's definitely room to grow in these different neighborhoods for the ballots cast. Let's see. And so I say all that to say this, is that in the next slide, we'll see that even a small increase in voter turnout can have a big impact on elections. Some of the elections in this slide show that just a handful of votes can change the outcome of the election. For November 2016, Champaign County had an election for the county board, and that was decided by only 37 votes. In March of 2018, Monticello had a decision on school funds for a new building project, and that building project was decided by 14 votes. And very recently, in November of 2018, Macon County had an election for their sheriff, and the Macon County Sheriff election was decided by one single vote. That election is still being recounted by a judge, so that goes to show that even just a very small number of votes can change the election in dramatic ways. If your one vote doesn't do it, your neighborhood's votes can do it. And so on the next slide, we'll look at a few different precincts that have low voter turnout numbers. These were from 2016, the presidential election. And these are the top 10 or 11 counties that, or I'm sorry, the 11 precincts that had the lowest voter turnout for the presidential election of 2016. And then as you can see that these different precincts are kind of all around the county. But something that's consistent among all these precincts is that it tends to be lower, or younger voters tend to have lower voter turnout, as you can see with the campus precincts, and then also more working class neighborhoods also have lower turnout. And then as you can see in this slide, each of these precincts has significantly more registered voters than ballots cast. So there's definitely room to grow, and just a little bit of increase in the voter turnout for these different precincts could have dramatic effects on the election, just as we saw on the last slide. So on the next slide, we'll look at how change is possible. On this slide, it's the campus precincts from the 2018 state election. The state elections are in between the presidential elections, and these state elections tend to have much lower turnout than the presidential ones, especially among young people and working class neighborhoods. As you can see in this slide, the campus precincts for the state elections had consistently been right around 20%. Sometimes they got to 30% or 40%, but consistently across the board, they're 20% or less. However, in 2018, that percentage changed to 60%, 70%, and in some of these precincts, as high as 84%. So that's just really unseen. So change is possible. This change in 2018 was done by the local Democratic Party, but that's not to say that it's not possible from a community organization. The Democratic Party didn't do anything revolutionary. All they did was simply knock the doors, and they knocked the doors repeatedly. They made sure that they knocked every single house and talked to the people about the importance of voting. So that can be done by a community organization. And then on the next slide, that does kind of talk about, this doesn't have to be a partisan issue. This is both Democrats and Republicans agree that there are both too few voters and too many uninformed voters. So this is really a common cause across both parties that we need better voter turnout and better educated voters. And as we've seen, just a little bit of voter turnout can go a long way in these elections. So I think that's about all I have for today. Definitely tell your friends and tell your family to register, research, and vote by November 3rd. And I think Anna Prism might have a little bit more to say.
James, thank you so much for all that information. It's amazing to see the data and the difference between, in some places, the number of registered voters and then the ones who actually turn out. As James said, there's a tremendous opportunity for a community group, for an organization, for individual people to just go around, or virtually, or whatever way seems right for this fall, to really encourage people to vote. And it doesn't have to be partisan. It's just saying to people, voting matters. As Muriel said at the beginning, voting is a...
Hold on, just a moment. All right, here we go.
What did you say? A vote is equal as a vote.
Okay, one more time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
James, thank you so much for sharing that data. It's really amazing to me to continue to be reminded of the difference in many locations between the number of registered voters and the number who actually turn out. What James told me many years ago is that all it takes is a few committed, interested people to encourage the friends and neighbors who live around them to vote. And with that, even a little bit of encouragement, people do turn out. So it can happen. And as Muriel said at the beginning, voting means hope. So one of the things we want to do is encourage our friends and neighbors to do just that. But the question that we were asked, or that Muriel asked right at the beginnings, was, okay, vote, but for whom? How am I going to know who the candidates are and make a decision about which candidates I'm going to vote for? Well, as James mentioned, he will be back next month to share with us a great resource for all of us, the candidate guide. So if you have your paper and pencil handy, you can even go now to a very easy to remember website. It's called votecu.org. That's votecu.org. and read information about all the candidates in contested races. However, you also have another opportunity in September, and I'm going to read some of this so I don't misspeak dates and information. Every year, or every election rather, the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the News Gazette, and this year Illinois Public Media, WILL TV, radio, and digital, co-sponsor candidate forums between candidates in contested races. This year is no exception. The forums will be held virtually on Zoom starting Wednesday, September 9. These all start on, they're on different days, and they start at 7 p.m. And they will be available afterwards. They'll be rebroadcast on UPTV, and I'm sure will be available on the League's YouTube page and other locations as well. But you might want to mark your calendar for the first of these forums. That's Wednesday, September 9, starting at 7. And the candidates for recorder, auditor, coroner, and treasurer will be on the forums. They'll be asked questions that have been submitted by people just like you and me who want to know where the candidates stand on issues that are important to us. The next forums are on Monday, September 14, Wednesday, September 16, and Thursday, September 17. In those forums, you'll see candidates for judge, and that's always a hard candidate to make decisions about because a lot of information just isn't available. Judges don't have long voting records the way members of the legislature do. So being able to see them in person and listen to the way they answer questions can be very helpful in deciding who you might vote for. County board candidates will be represented, as will candidates for the state legislature. You can find this entire schedule at the League of Women Voters website. But please do tune in and start to learn the information about the candidates, part of the preparation step. So with that in mind, Muriel, I'll turn it back to you for some concluding comments.
Thank you, James and Ann. These sessions have truly been a collaborative effort. It's not only about Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, or Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, or the League of Women Voters, or Champaign County Voters Alliance, but it's also about the NAACP. It's about Delta Sigma Theta. All of us have been involved in trying to get out the word and trying to encourage everyone to be informed electorate. As the election season progresses, more community entities will be involved. We have other fraternities and sororities who are members of the Black Greek Alliance and Network. They will be doing things as well. And so what can you do? How can you get out the vote? As I had mentioned a little earlier, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority asked that each of the members talk to 8 to 10 people to come up with their plan to vote. I'm going to challenge you to talk to at least 1 to 2, maybe 3 people, and talk to them about what is their plan to vote. Will they be voting in person? Have they requested their ballot in the mail? Actually talk to them and make them commit to what are they, because this is a serious matter. Voting is serious, and so we want to make sure that everyone is engaged. One of the things that James had mentioned to us, that CC9 only had 53.8% of the registered voters voting. That's the Garden Hills community. We have lots of room to grow when it comes to getting the members, the registered voters to get out there and vote. But you have communities like CC21, which is a country club area. You had 84% of those registered people voting. We want to make sure that we can get everyone out there to vote. And so make sure that you are a part of having those discussions to help people decide how they'll get out there and vote. Next month will be our last election season session, but we will try to do other things to encourage you to be informed. For instance, we're going to try to do virtual watch parties when it comes to the presidential debate. There'll be a vice president debate as information out there. So again, you want to be an informed citizen, you want to be an informed voter. And so thank you for tuning in with us each month. Thank you for your insistence on knowing who you vote for. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Make some